fill her up, but what's up with that? My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I know how to use a hammer. My name is Shahir Dowd.
Tinha uma perna dentro de tubarão. Meu nome é Isabel.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film The Secret Agent. And friendos, Topam fam, if you haven't already guessed, Izzy is back.
Yes.
Yeah, and you got to hear my shitty Portuguese.
Here's the best part. I couldn't tell it was shitty.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they'll find it charming.
Well, thank you very much for coming back for this one. Always a pleasure.
Of course. Always happy to be here.
Yeah, the last time you were on was The Materialist, which for some reason was not nominated for Best Picture this year, and I'm very disappointed to hear about this. I cannot tell you how many emails I have gotten about our Materialist episode in terms of like how many people think I am absolutely 180 degrees wrong on that movie. Have you guys changed your opinions on The Materialist throughout this year at all?
Not really.
Not at all.
Not at all? Still dislike it?
I mean, that's probably the last time I thought about it, honestly.
Yeah, I haven't really done much pontificating around it. I've been busy, Shahir. There's been some shit going on. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks, let's just say the least. Izzy, also since the last time we've had you on the show, you were recently featured in Marie Claire, talking about both your YouTube channel and how to think about the Oscars coming up this year. Can you give us, just a little bit of insight into what you're thinking about this year's Oscars race?
I'm going to be so vulnerable with you. I haven't been paying attention as much as I usually do because I am so up to my neck in movies about starring Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah.
that I simply have had no time to even think about this. But it seems like it's one battle after another year. Speaking of Secret Agent, though, I am really interested to see where Best International Film goes this year, because it seems like there's a battle brewing between Secret Agent and Sentimental Value.
I was going to go with It Was Just an Accident to win that one. I think Sentimental Value will get... I think that's got more of a chance in the Best Picture nominee, but I don't think it's going to win it there either. And I have a sneaking suspicion the politics around Iran at this time will kind of push It Was Just an Accident into the forefront. That's my feeling about it.
You think?
Yeah, I don't know. But
I feel like
I'm doing it from a purely political point of view, not from the movies.
Well, I think, Secret Agent definitely has some political points to score, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not necessarily as politically pertinent as Iran right now, perhaps?
I think they all have their own wonderful ways that people can judge these films outside of the film themselves about the world that they are discussing in their stories.
Yeah, fair enough.
Totally.
Also, F1's not going to win Best Picture. I'm sorry, guys.
That's
I'm sorry.
Crazy.
I'm sorry.
How dare you say that?
What
not
a
gonna
crazy
happen.
nomination that was. The next thing, just the last thing I wanted to jump into before we actually talked about this Best Picture nominee and Best Foreign Film, Best International Picture nominee, was this article that came out this week that I sent to you both from The Atlantic, from Rose Horowitz, which was titled "The Film Students Who Can No Longer Sit Through Films." It was also accompanied by another article this week, also saying about English literature students not being able to read books either. And I think this is kind of a sort of general phenomenon right now that students don't have the capacity to either read books or, to my shock horror, to watch films anymore. I was curious what either of you made of that phenomenon and what prescription you might have if you were running a film studies course this year to try and pull film students in. I was just sort of endlessly fascinated by this idea that film students couldn't watch movies. In the Atlantic article, they talked about the fact that they would screen The Conversation for students, the Francis Ford Coppola film, and people wouldn't have the patience to get to the end, which is the major reveal. Then they would prompt them and ask them questions about the end, and nobody would know at all what had happened. And I just found that kind of incredible, but not unsurprising in any way. I was curious Izzy, what you thought about that, this phenomenon, the fact that people can't watch movies anymore.
I think it is true of students throughout time that they want to avoid doing the work. And I think it's just become easier and easier to actually avoid it. I think what's actually most shocking to me about it is like, why take a film class in the first place?
Yeah.
If you don't want to watch the movies, like what's the point? I guess maybe just to fulfill a requirement or something, but it made it sound like these are kids in actual film school.
Well, in my experience, having taught at a film school, there was always this sort of like strange phenomenon where you'd say like there were, in a class of 20, there would be at least 4 or 5 maybe who were like dedicated cinephiles who would watch everything, who'd seen everything before they'd come to the class. Then there would be around 10 more students who were like, willing to try things out. And then there were 5 who just rocked into a film class because they thought it would be easy, or, like came into the class kind of thinking that they were just going to be watching movies. And then when they had to watch, Battleship Potemkin or 2001: A Space Odyssey or, something, the thing that I remember the most is like people thinking Citizen Kane looked like television and looked like a crappy TV movie to them. That was sort of like a phenomenon that we had quite a few times with showing older movies.
Were they watching it with frame blending on?
No, they just, like these were people, so this was 20 years ago now, so a sort of very different frame of reference. But maybe in, current times, it would be people who, only had watched Disney movies, only had watched Marvel movies, only had watched Fast and the Furious and that kind of thing. In those times, it was like only had watched Star Wars, and just, had no frame of reference outside of that of what a movie could be. So that was sort of like that was the sort of breakdown that we would have. But the thing that I think, Izzy, in terms of what you're saying to, people not willing to do the work, the point of the film class was that it was the easiest work you could do. You would just go in and watch a movie, like it was like 2 hours. It wasn't like reading a book. So it was like
never underestimate.
Yeah.
Never underestimate the drive for laziness. Here, I have 2 thoughts. I have 2 very minor things here. One, I didn't read the article because I can't. I just don't have the attention span to read. Two, how much of this phenomenon is real, and how much this feels like a real, like, sort of like an older person having an axe to grind with the youths. And I'm not saying that like it doesn't actually happen from time to time. Of course it does, but this feels like no one wants to work anymore. Like, that's the vibe I'm getting. Because Izzy, to your point, if you're taking a film class, like, there has to be at least some people in that thing that are interested. Like, I know there's going to be the breakdown of people that are taking it as a gimme, but like, I don't know. Again, I'll read the article. I will. I just did not have time before this. I just thought it'd be also funny to not read the article.
I mean, I totally agree with that in the sense that I think there's always some fear from older generations about how new technologies affect young people. I will say anecdotally, because I know people who teach English in college, they are having a lot of trouble getting students to do any work. And like will tell you they literally can't read.
Yeah.
And it's like, it does worry me a lot, actually. Because I can't think of anything. I mean, to me, the thing I value most about like myself and my friends and like humanity in general is just like, the fact that we can think, that we have opinions, that we like have imaginations. And so if the idea of that like eroding in mass is very scary to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting because like you definitely can get through both classes by not doing the work. Like there's no question. I am sad and see that in the sort of English part of it, or in sort of writing or reading acumen. And I guess people could also do that with films too, but like films used to be the things. Now I'm the old man shaking my fist at the cloud. Films used to be the things that you'd get away from doing standard reading with. That was the way you did it before. Yeah. Now, so like It is a sad state of affairs if we all can put on our taken off caps for the proliferation of various ways to either cheat, swindle, or just not think about what you are doing. And I hope that that's not just me being old man on my porch saying get off my lawn. The tools that are at the disposal of people it's far too easy and tempting I think, for students today to just sort of take the easy way out because they're maybe at least the ones that are not interested in actually, putting in the full effort of what they're going for.
There's another dimension to this, which is that what the lecturers are kind of describing isn't just that the students aren't willing to put in the work, but their capacity for sitting down to watch a 2-hour movie is dwindling. Their ability to like disassociate themselves from their cell phones or understand something that's not delivered to you in bite-sized chunks is diminishing because the big phenomenon is that since iPhones, kind of appeared and social media really became on the forefront. People's capacity to watch things that are longer than 1 to 2 minutes is diminishing away, or is changing rapidly, and it's something that they're kind of noticing in schools as well as not even just in English lit or film studies, but like economics and medicine. People aren't able to like read complicated long form articles or text or books anymore because just their attention spans are changing. Our attention spans are shifting away from because we receive media in different ways right now as well. We consume content in bite-sized chunks. So to ask someone to sit down and basically eat a meal when they're not hungry is kind of is the sort of noticeable phenomenon about this as well. So I was curious with that, just before we jump into the movie, if you had a movie that might ail this situation in some way, if you were taking Film 101, and what would you prescribe, knowing that your students might have a difficult propensity for sitting down to watch a 2-hour movie? Any thoughts?
K-pop Demon Hunter. No.
I think it's a very valid answer.
It kind of could be in a couple different ways, but it would be cheating, in my opinion.
Yeah, why?
It would be cheating because I think that movie, while don't get me wrong, it's easily on my top 10 list this year. I fucking love that movie. I do think it is also built to be, even by its very nature, as sort of a musical, for lack of a better term, it is built to, you could experience it also in bite-sized chunks and still like get it. Do you know what I mean? Like it is built for that attention span, even though it is a feature-length film. Maybe it could bridge the gap, but I could also, I could see that going sort of either way. If like you started with that and then you went with something more traditional or something that it was less frenetic or possibly bite-sized. I could see it like going either way depending on the person's proclivities. But yeah, I'll use that for my answer. Sure. Nice. That could be mine.
Izzy, how about you?
I have a couple different theories of this.
Okay.
I think like the first task is getting someone to like sit down for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So like in my mind, that doesn't even mean this needs to be like a single narrative. You just need to get in the habit of like physically sitting in front of a screen for 2 hours to pay attention to one thing. So like the first step for me would be something like Fantasia, where it's almost like short stories,
short films,
and there's a lot of like engagement with it because you're kind of like watching music videos, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
And then from there, like I would like, then the next step would be like introducing plot so that people have like characters to follow and stuff. And maybe like the easiest way to do that is to do something that kind of straddles the line between more traditional drama and like blockbuster. So something like Jaws, I think would be really good,
Yeah.
And then just kind of keep pushing it from there. So it's like you gradually ladder up into something that can be like really challenging and slow, but you have to kind of get there via gradual steps.
Yeah, I think the Fantasia answer is kind of a little bit like the K-pop Demon thing as well, which is that it's like, something that could be digestible in small bite-sized chunks and kind of bridge that. It's funny how we're trying to like basically get students, or we're thinking about this in terms of like getting students to like be able to just watch a movie, like as though they'd never done it before as well, which is, I think, maybe where we are. My thought, and I don't know if this is a correct one, was to go with comedy. Because comedy, watching in an audience, particularly sort of a sort of seemingly sterile situation like a film class, is the one thing that kind of unites us. We can laugh together, that sort of thing. And so for me, that movie, the one that made sense to me was Dr. Strangelove, in terms of like, it's a comedy that is really rambunctiously silly, but also poignant. It's one where I think it bridges the gap between like you can watch this and enjoy this on a sort of purely just entertainment level, but also it's very evident what it's trying to say and try to do. Maybe, something like a Monty Python would be good in that respect as well. But yeah, Dr. Strangelove was the one that came to mind, but I have a sneaking suspicion I might be very disappointed if I like throw on Dr. Strangelove and just heard like, crickets the entire time.
I mean, if they can't read, can they understand Dr.
Yeah, that's the other question, right? Maybe if we recut it as a vertical drama, it'll really work out.
I do think it's interesting though, thinking about kind of having to learn the language of certain things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, as someone who watches a lot of 30s and 40s movies, it's like you have to learn like what certain things kind of mean. It's like talking around subjects or like what you don't see or is always like not part of the text, but it is part of the text. And so I just feel like it's probably so hard to get students to actively learn that now instead of just completely dismissing it off the first go because they don't get it.
There's like there's media literacy with almost everything. We were just dealing with this actually on a stream. I know it's different, but that's the same with video games. It's the same with being able, if you played video games, knowing exactly like how a controller works to at least move it, even a dual camera stick or something like that. And then it comes down to genre specific things. Actually, if I was having trouble getting people to sit down and actually watch a movie, and if I had the ability to do different medium, I might give them something like a Telltale game or the most recent sort of narrative game Dispatch, because it's formatted almost like it's the length of a film broken up into a series of like almost episodic television episodes where you're basically watching it, but you get dialogue choices and some quick time events. Like It keeps you like sitting down, and you could easily do it for 2 hours and like it would be a good lull to get them to the point where like, okay, now you're not going to have any interactivity and you're just going to take this in. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, there's an interesting part of this movie that we're going to have to discuss about in terms of like what's being said versus what's being intended here, which is there's an element in this movie which I actually did not understand watching it the first time around, and it was only later through hearing a couple of interviews that I actually came to understand it. So it's maybe a good segue into trying to figure out this movie that we're going to be talking about. Matt, could you tell us what The Secret Agent is about?
I sure can. And it's not me, by the way. It's the Internet Movie Database letting you know. In 1977, a technology expert flees from a mysterious past and returns to his hometown of Recife in search of peace. He soon realizes that the city is far from being the refuge he seeks.
This is the second film by Kleber Mendonça Filho, and I hope I'm pronouncing that one correctly, that we've done on the show. Previously, we had done Bacurau. He does have a little segment on the Criterion channel right now where you can watch his essentially video essay documentary, Pictures of Ghosts, which is really fascinating. I watched this week.
That's a great name.
Yeah, if you enjoy this film, that is a perfect accompaniment to this film because it's set in his hometown. It actually features many of the characters who become fictionalized in The Secret Agent as well. So, for example, the projectionist, his father-in-law in the movie theater is actually based off a real person that he knew at that time as well. And it's kind of when you watch Pictures of Ghosts, there's a kind of loving portrait of that person. So for him to actually be able to recreate it or recast him in this movie is kind of fascinating as well as like his love of those old movie theaters where a lot of the movie The Secret Agent takes place. I'm told The Secret Agent is actually currently playing in that theater.
That's cool.
So it's a really fascinating meta experience where you can basically walk out into the theater where a lot of this takes place.
I got to go see this at the Cobble Hill Cinema.
Oh, nice.
Which is my old school one and back when I used to live in Cobble Hill, and it was such a good homecoming, especially with this movie about being a homecoming and like getting to see it in that sort of space in a theater that's probably the same, I don't know, meta level or not as corporate as going to see it at like the AMC or whatever. I don't know. I really was thankful for the Cobble Hill Cinema at that point because it just felt like it was thematically correct.
Yeah, I like that theater.
Yeah.
Izzy, what did you think of the movie?
I loved it. I think it's fantastic. I don't even know how to like summarize exactly what I think about it, but I think what is so... I always really appreciate when there are kind of surrealist elements that kind of intrude into a very realistic film. and express something that is kind of unspoken emotionally, maybe. And I appreciate that he was able to do that, but not just that, cross it into several different genres. You know, sometimes this is a drama, sometimes it's a thriller, sometimes it's, you know, hearkening back to these very Hollywood-esque kind of like editing styles. You can tell that he's such a student of film history himself, and such a has such affection for the place that he grew up. And to me, like, that's what it's all about, you know, like getting people to tell really personal stories that challenge us. And this is kind of the perfect expression of that, and engaging with Brazilian history.
Yeah. I think I had that sort of Izzy, have you, like, how often have you been to Brazil? I know you're from there originally. Like,
I'm not from. My dad's from there.
Your dad's from there, but have you spent much time there at all? Or
I mean, I've been there like a handful of times. You know, still my dad's whole family is still there. He's there right now, actually. So I wouldn't say that I didn't grow up in like a bilingual household or anything like that. So I guess like my familiarity, I guess, with the history is surface level compared to obviously what Brazilians would know, but probably more than like most Americans would know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess like I think over the past 2 years with this, and I'm still here, it's been a really good occasion. And also like so many documentaries have come out. Apocalypse in the Tropics came out this year. So I've been really lucky to have a lot of cinematic pathways into understanding the country even more intimately over the past couple of years. And that's been really satisfying.
I think there's a real textural quality to the way this is actually filmed as well, in terms of like feeling like this is actually a place with a lot of history to it. Like in a way, it kind of I'm from Fiji as well, and I visited Fiji, and there's not many movies about Fiji, by the way, but like, you know, when I was there, I went and saw the old cinema, and watching this kind of reminded me of that, with like the broken paint, the sort of, you know, tropical colors of things that were there, the sort of, you know, non-air conditioned movie theater, and that sense that this is a place that has actually been really lived in and has a history to it. And I think the amazing thing about watching this alongside Pictures of Ghost is that this is a town that is like hasn't become a modern metropolis or anything like that. This is really the same town that existed in the 1970s. It still looks the same way in many parts of it. And I think that's really fascinating. The film as a whole, it actually took me a long while to kind of get on board with this movie. I think I found myself kind of like wondering where the story was going for a long period of time. And it's one of those fascinating cases where the inciting incidents of this movie happened before the movie began and isn't really referred to until about halfway through the movie. So you're kind of just wandering around with this character, trying to figure out, like, why is he here? What happened to get him here? What is the backstory of this? And it does take a little bit of time to sort of wind up into it. There's, of course, you know, magnificent imagery, particularly a leg inside of a shark, which is the kind of the thing that I wanted to talk about in a little bit of detail. But by the time we got towards the second and third act of this movie, particularly the third act, where there's a sort of sequence of assassins stalking someone through the streets of Recife. Is that I'm not going to pronounce it correctly through this one.
Recife, yeah, yeah.
But by that point, there was particularly a soundtrack, a score in this by Bando Pifíferos, I think they're called. I was 100% on board at that point. In fact, as soon as I got out of the movie theater, I just listened to that for the rest of the week. Wherever I was going, wherever I was walking, I just found that the film was so compelling by the time we really understood how all the pieces started fitting together. And then as I thought about it more this week in terms of how the film is examining the period of Brazilian dictatorship, the sort of mid-period of the Brazilian dictatorship, and what this film has to say about it, particularly in kind of like, almost in that Dr. Strangelove way, the idiocy of it all, the kind of like foolishness. Like there's a sense that the dictatorship is eating itself in many ways through this film. I really fell in love with this movie, and I think I you know, kind of, it took me a while to win me over, but once I got to the end, I kind of found that it was pretty majestic. And the way it handles essentially navigating the sort of genre idea that's at the heart of the title of this movie into something bigger, which is both a poetic reflection of the town that, you know, the filmmaker came from, but also this idea of like how history has changed the place and how it becomes embedded and transformed within a place. I did find this movie kind of like a really beautiful love letter to his hometown, as well as a really fascinating political thriller as well. Although maybe not in the conventional sense of the political thriller, because again, for a lot of this movie, we don't really know what has happened to get us to this point or why it's happened.
It's a thriller. It's a thriller whose thrills come from politics, but it's not a political thriller. Like it's not, the politics of the place are the reason why things are happening, but it's never it's an examination on a much more personal level than like, we have to get these papers to the press or else this, you know, like it's so like I see the pathway. I had kind of the opposite road there, but I got to the same place. I didn't know what was going on for most of this thing, because the way that it's sort of structured, it kind of brings you all over the place, but I didn't care because it was awesome. I just really, really bought into it from the gas station. Actually, to be honest, I bought into it from the tagline. When it was literally like Brazil 1977, a time of great mischief. And I wasn't sure at the moment, like if that is sort of like an intentional softening of a translation, or if mischief has a larger, more sinister connotation in, you know, not in English. Like, you know, I couldn't place that one way or the other. I'm also a sucker for anything outside of the US in the 1970s. I do a lot of history on the YouTube channel, and actually the only thing I know about Brazilian history is the 1800s with like Pedro I. Like we did a series on that forever ago called The Empire of Brazil, which is a fascinating story. Please go check that out if you're interested in Brazilian history. And but like that's so far gone. Like I love seeing what the 70s specifically are like in countries that are not the United States. Because it is so varied. It's so close to us here, like 50 something years or something along those lines. But like it feels both forever away and just yesterday. And I'm always so fascinated by that. So I was just on this ride the entire time, specifically, you know, following Antonio through, like, when he arrives at, I guess, like the safe house, and what was the woman's name?
Dona Sebastiana.
Donna, thank you. She locked me in. Yeah. Like, it was so like effortless, and the world felt instantly real because of her. And then I was like, I don't care where this movie goes. Yeah, I'm a little confused or why we're doing this. I don't care. Oh, we're going to go here now. Oh, we're in a morgue with the shark with the foot and it's there. Okay, cool. Okay, now we're going to follow this like father-son kind of sort of hitman duo. Cool. Oh, now it's the chief of police. Oh, now it's, you know, a flashback to it. I'm like, I was like, yeah, take me on this. Lead me away. I loved the hell out of this from start to finish. A time of great mischief. I was like, let's fucking go.
I mean, speaking of the intro, though, like, I think maybe, I don't know if you remember, like, there are all these pictures that flash in the beginning.
Yes.
So, like, a lot of the people who are in those pictures are, like, singers and actors. And, like, some of them were, like, kicked out of the country, essentially, by the government. Yeah. But they also are such definitive artists of Brazil of that time period because they were making such politically important work.
Yeah.
So it kind of like sets the mood, I think, in a very specific way for people who are like aware of that history and that culture, to like see certain people who are just like, oh my God, like you were in France because you couldn't be there, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And the way
it puts like mischief in a different way too.
Yeah.
And the way that those images then become the way that the film handles essentially what is the big climax of the movie kind of off screen. Because, you know, I guess we're into spoilers right now, but is it Antonio or Armando? Armando Wagner Moura's
I thought it was Antonio. Am I wrong?
He's got like 3 different names here, but he's at some point. I think his assumed name is Marcello, and then his real name is Armando. Because that's what the assassin is calling him.
Maybe I got it wrong.
To try and get him later on, and then he plays a third character throughout in the film as well. But when his dispatching happens entirely off screen and without, the sort of great climax of the chase sequence that is happening at the third act of this movie. You realize that is the point of the photographs at the beginning as well. He is just another one of those, those facets of history that has been kind of, become a permanent imprint. But maybe, just one of many stories that in this place as well. And I had talked to a friend who watched this movie who really didn't like that idea, didn't like the idea that the climax happened off screen. But I think if it wasn't followed by essentially sort of this beautiful coda about the traces that image leaves behind, when we follow Wagner Moore's third character, Fernando, his son, then I could see it being unsatisfying, but as it stands, because the third act of the film the final coda really becomes like, well, this place used to be so different and now it's a hospital, and this place where all these things happened have kind of all morphed away into something else. I found that really to be really quite deeply affecting in terms of like, I guess just the idea that the times that we live in, can fundamentally change. And obviously, I try not to make everything American centric, but, as we examine how, education systems like the one in this film get attacked, and we think about what's happening right now with universities across the United States in terms of having their funding pulled, the resonance of like, in 20 to 30 years' time, this could entirely be just a sort of fragment of history, gone past, is a sort of really both a sort of sad idea because it is like there's so much that's lost to time, but also like somewhat of a reassuring idea that the madness can't continue, the mischief can't necessarily continue in this way. So I found that actually really, really beautiful. And, Matt, as you're coming back to the character of Donna Sebastiana. There's so many characters in this movie that feel like they have their own story. The two hitmen, on the beach, like the one kind of calling in the hit on the beach. I was like, this is a whole movie. His day on the beach feels like it's a whole movie unto itself that I would like happily watch at this point. The mechanics of how they pay for the hit. This reminded me a lot of Andrew Dominik's film Killing Them Softly. Actually, the other movie I was thinking about that we had all talked about was Andrew Dominik's other film Blonde, which I recall us not having a great response to.
But yeah, we weren't loving that.
But Killing Them Softly has this like amazing negotiation of like how to price crime. And there was like this fascinating part that was happening in this movie where like someone was being paid X amount of dollars, then going to renegotiate with someone else and like obviously taking off quite a significant amount of that money to like keep for themselves while having to do no work at all. And it was like, this is both the dictatorship eating itself and capitalism and the kind of like core tenets of capitalism operating in itself.
That's job creation.
Yeah, it is job creation. Yeah. And then there was just this fascinating, the thing that really got me, was this idea that, this dictatorship was eating itself in terms of like the hitman hired a second hitman to actually do the job that eventually killed the people who was helping him in this kind of era of corruption as well. So it was just like this idea of like feasting on itself that I really just found very, very fun to watch. So there was just so much going on towards the back end of this movie that I kind of like, yeah, as I say, really fell in love with it. But I want to talk about like I think Izzy, you kind of mentioned it as well, the sort of like introduction of surrealism in this movie. And there's one particular sequence in this movie that kind of had me confused as it was happening. And then it was only after listening to a couple of interviews, I was like, oh, that's what it is. And I'm speaking, of course, of the hairy leg incident. Do you guys remember this moment in the movie?
No,
how could you forget?
Yeah, I was just like, what is happening at this moment? I really was like trying to make sense of it all, and couldn't make sense of it until I realized what Kleber was doing and how it was playing into his bigger idea of how the oppression of the dictatorship actually worked. So do you guys want to jump into this specific thing? Or,
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, do you have any thoughts about this moment or like how it played?
Well,
for
I know
you?
where I know where you're going. It's funny that this has sort of happened. Sorry, I keep bringing up the other job. But we're doing a series on Victorian horrors and the Penny Dreadfuls specifically, and the way that stories start in various places and outlive their origin for specific purposes. And when the hairy leg kind of came into it, it sort of, to me, signaled, and I don't know, maybe I don't know what you're going to say, but for me, it sort of signaled the way that culture, regardless of oppression, still has its own either tales or structures or, you know, rumors or wives' tales or mysteries or rules that like still move forward with it regardless of the corruption, because it will just stay with people. And the hairy leg is a real thing from Brazil in like actual published, essentially what could be considered Brazilian Penny Dreadfuls, like back in the day, like small, cheap, almost horror comic book type things, but it was based off of an urban legend, and it became a thing that just kept going and kept like reinvigorating itself. And so to me, that just sort of signaled like the undercurrent of everything still moving, and still like you can't stop the hairy leg. Like the hairy leg is going to keep on coming no matter who is oppressed, no matter who gets killed, no matter who's, doing whatever. Like there is something in the undercurrent and underbelly of society that will, for lack of a better term, keep on kicking. That's sort of how I took it anyway. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's where I went.
So I think it's important to remember, like, this movie to me is really about like memory more than anything. And basically Brazil's attempts at remembering and also failures to remember what happened during this time period.
Yeah.
And so the hairy leg folktale, I guess, if you want to call it that, or urban legend, was also kind of used as like a metaphor.
Yeah.
Or like literally in newspapers, like you're not allowed to talk about actual politics in newspapers. So like you have to talk about it a different way. And so it was kind of like a code, if we want to say that, for like talking about police violence. So seeing it in this film where it's like a literalization of that idea, where it's like this leg is like kicking queer people and like sex workers and all of these things, like just creating this new like false memory based on like what information would have literally been available, as opposed to like actually showing what was happening, which is like the police or the military coming after these like communities, subversive communities. Yeah, like it's like a really interesting way of doing it, because it just kind of like is playing with that idea of memory and how we imagine the past.
Yeah.
Which is also part of why I think like not showing his death is so important to the film, because so much of the debate, I guess, that's been happening in Brazil recently has been like whether or not we actually want to do that. Like when the dictatorship fell, they basically passed like a mass amnesty where people who were involved with the dictatorship basically got off. Like they're just like, it's better if we just all move on from this. And Dilma Rousseff, a recent president, was basically opened a truth commission to say like, actually, let's look into this, not to prosecute anybody, but we need to like reckon with what happened, because she herself was a anti-dictatorship like guerrilla fighter. And people got pissed about it and like unfairly impeached her. And so it is that like push and pull of like, do we want to know? Do we not want to know? Like, is it embarrassing? Is it going to hurt? And I feel like that is part of Fernando's story, is like, does he actually want to know? Like, not really. And so like not seeing that shown in the film to me was like, his answer to that debate is like, well, I don't want to know it, so we're not going to see it. And like, that's kind of tragic in its own way. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I landed on it.
I think I'd listened to an interview with Kleber Mendoza, who said that he was using it both as like, Matt, as you were kind of describing, like the sort of old ancient folklore that had been passed through time there, but also as a way to cover up a coding for the police violence that was going on, that we see them prepping for, the hitman and the police officers kind of like get into a car and they're out to have some fun. And then what we see is that the foot is the one that kind of perpetrates the crime, which is how the newspapers reported on it the next day, which is a scene that we see, the refugees, which is what they call themselves, kind of reading in the newspaper, stories of the Hairy League kind of attacking people, particularly, people of color, minorities, queer people as well. And that's how that story kind of like, permeates itself through these times. And it's like under pressure, moments of oppression, how do we kind of continue to communicate stories, in an effective way? And, when, again, as I was watching the movie, I'll 100%, fess up that I just did not know what was happening. And I was like, what is this? It's amazing and it's beautiful. But I was like, I don't understand what is happening right now. Cause up until this movie, I had not heard the Hairy League myth or the Hairy League story. I'd never heard of it at all. So I was like, wait, the League from Jaws is kind of jumping out here. What is happening?
Well, it's funny because sorry, I was going to say, and I didn't know, like I understood the sort of story memory context of it, or at least that's what I gleaned, but I did not know that it was used as sort of a subversive code for like essentially reporting what the awful things that either the police or the military were doing, so like until literally right now. Yeah. And so like I like it even more now because
it's greater,
that
right?
makes a lot more like it connects a specific scene of when you actually see it doing its footwork.
Yeah, doing its dance. And it's like it makes that so much of a richer moment. We're like again, for me, when I listened to the interview, there was just this moment where I was like, oh, I get it now. Like I was like really, and I was like, and then also at the same time going, that's brilliant. Like that's kind of an ingenious way to tackle a really specific part of history and use it in a fascinating way within the story. I thought that was just genius. So I kind of, the more I thought about this movie, the more I sat with it, the more I fell in love with it over time as well. There's a lot being made of Wagner Moura's performance here. And obviously, he is an actor recognizable to our audience. He was in Civil War, which we did Alex Garland's films last year. But, most people probably recognize him from Narco. The other thing that people may have seen is Elite Squad. But he hasn't been nominated for Best Actor here. I really like the performance. I'm not as gung-ho on this performance being the performance of the year or anything like that, but I did think it was very good in an excellent movie. So I kind of thought of it more in the context of he's really well served by the movie, as well as being good in himself. And I think his sort of best moments are when he plays Fernando towards the end of the movie. That's a smart bit of casting to cast the same actor as both the father and the son. I thought that was particularly a clever use of him as well. But I wondered what you guys thought of like the Wagner Moura of it all in this story as well.
I'm glad you said that because I think my favorite bit of acting in the whole movie is when he first walks out as Fernando. And he has kind of this like casual gait. It's just like another day for him. And he's just kind of, making his way through the room the way he would any other day. Like
he's not weighed down by everything that is happening.
Yeah. It's like, it's a completely different context and state of mind. And you read it all in his body without him doing anything. And I think that was so powerful to me, just the ways that like you can kind of take a day for granted. And the way that affects your body. But yeah, I really loved his performance in this, but that moment stood out to me for sure.
I think that jumped out at me as well. I think overall, one of the reasons, and this is so interesting from a as not an actor myself, judging actors, right? I think his performance is excellent, but it's also subdued, and he understands the assignment. Like, I think he is portraying his character before he's Fernando in a way that elevates everyone else being their characters and telling the overall story without taking because it is about him, right? He's doing the things, but his performance is never drawing attention to him, which is essentially what the character is trying not to do anyway, right? Like, the character's trying not to have attention drawn to him. So there's a lot of excellent subtle work that I don't think registers to me when I'm not really trying to dissect it as wow, what a great performance. I think this performance is great, but I think this performance is great because he understands the assignment, and the assignment is kind of bleed into this world and don't be overly noticed, but essentially make sure that your performance helps the other performances and the world that we're building excel. That's kind of where I was at.
And I think that's really important because I think it needs to be restated that this is just some guy. This, he is not a dissident. He is not an activist. But he is nevertheless on the run because he has become at odds with the corporate element of the dictatorship. And so it's I think that's really important too. It's just he should be kind of normal. And because that's how this works. It affects everybody. Everybody is at risk. Doesn't matter what you do or whether or not you are directly involved in opposition to the government. It's coming for everybody. And so to have him just kind of sink into the environment like that is really crucial in building the world in an accurate way.
And it's in contrast to the fact when we do kind of see him, and it's sort of that sort of interesting move that this movie does, which is doesn't really reveal how he ended up in this situation until probably midway to 3/4 of the way through the movie, is that when we see who he was before he was put into the situation, he's a different character. He carries himself differently. He is in charge of a laboratory, and he is also willing to push back, at every turn to the idea that their research will be shut down or sent to, corporate, dictated by corporate interests as opposed to actual research interests. And again, in a sort of, political mirroring of the world that we live in now, this is kind of oddly a conversation that a lot of people are starting to have in universities in the United States as we've gone into year 2 of this particular administration, which has a not dissimilar approach to I guess cultural hegemony, is what they're interested in terms of, not spending their time and research, time and focus and resources on intellectual development or research or how can we improve as a country, but more in terms of clamping down on what can we control in terms of how do we control our academics? How do we control our our political class? How do we control our fourth estate in terms of journalism? That seems to be what this particular administration is more focused on than anything else, which of course mirrors the Brazilian dictatorship throughout, the three decades that lasted. And I think that there is like when we watched I'm Still Here last year, Walter Sell's film, some sense of it is a little unnerving to see how quickly this can unravel. And we hope that we don't live in a situation that, escalates to that level of oppression and dictatorship. But, if anything, what this movie shows is how quickly it happens and how quick, as you just kind of mentioned, how much it can affect everyone. In the United States, the rounding up of university students who wrote pro-Palestinian op-eds, should be a major red flag in terms of, the New York Times ran this thing about how close we are to an autocracy. And that to me is a major step towards an autocracy when you're clamping down on free speech, particularly at, to individuals who ultimately, and I'm not just, diminishing these people, but are insignificant to the greater political populace, but are being rounded up nonetheless because the point is cruelty and the point is, tamping down on what you can and can't say, which is what happens in this movie. And again, what's brilliant about this movie is that it's happened by the time that the movie has started. It's not something that slowly creeps into the story. It's already happened, and these people are still living their lives, and they're still getting to go see Jaws. And whatever John Paul Belmondo film was playing in the movie theater. I had a suspicion it was called Secret Agent, but it's not. It's actually not. Did either of you clock that movie?
I don't know that. I don't know the film.
No,
I think it was
Secret
called
Agent is like part of the tagline, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what it was.
I think it was called. I looked this up earlier in the week. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was called Magnifique or something like that, which was like one of Belmondo's kind of like silly, action movies. And I was like, I wondered if that was where the title of this movie came from. But I'm not entirely sure. But like, coming back to the sort of oppression of it all, people can still wander around and lead their lives, but their lives have been compressed or some way or diminished in some way because of the regime that sits on top of them. And I think, the movie isn't explicit about it. It is not sort of standing on a platform to like, give us warning signals, but it's like, that's kind of what the takeaway for at least an American audience should be, is like how quickly this can slip away from you, or how quickly, to quote from the Washington Post, how quickly democracy dies in darkness, despite what happened at the Washington Post this week.
Would you say it dies, this is how it dies, to thunderous applause?
Yeah, or if you switch the lights off, that's how the darkness creeps in.
It kind of like, it's just like you learn a new normal really quickly, and you don't realize that. Like, I mean, even in the very beginning of the film, when he's kind of getting his gas, and the police come, and there's like a dead body on the road, and that car drives by, and the woman is like, keep driving. Yeah. Like, the whole family is kind of looking out the window, and she's just like, don't stop, keep going. And it's like, you can immediately understand what that means. Like, if you see a certain type of thing going on, like, I imagine people in Minnesota right now, when they're driving down the street, they know exactly what they're looking at. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you learn how things are working. And that's kind of scary too.
I remember when we were growing up in Fiji during like the political coups that happened there, we would have to like spend nights at our neighbor's house because the curfew would come in at 9:30 or something like that. And suddenly, like, and I was a little kid at the time, but like, you adapt to this idea very quickly that like, you can't leave your house at 9:30 and everyone needs to be inside, or else they will be rounded up by the military at some point. Like, you just, these, and as you say, Minnesota right now would probably be like feeling the same way in terms of, people dropping their kids off to school might have an extra layer of caution that they have these days, or, restaurants, and, it just seems like it doesn't take much. And, the terrifying part is like, we're kind of living in some way, obviously not like the Brazilian dictatorship, but in some part, the red flags should be up on everyone's alert radars right now in terms of where we are. But we're here, we're doing a podcast, we go to the movies, we go to Cobble Hill. I went to Kew Garden Cinema to see this. I got my popcorn, I had a taco afterwards, and, enjoyed my night, and, roamed freely. Right. But I mean, that's what's so shocking to me too, is like, I guess that's just a feeling that I've been having generally, that I'm wrestling with just mentally and emotionally over the past, month and a half, is like, how do you live life, or like, how do you continue doing normal things knowing that like nothing is normal? And like having guilt about being like, should I start a book club? Like stupid thoughts that are just so, in any other context, like completely normal, but feeling like there must be something to be done, or like, like, shouldn't we be panicking? And like, it's kind of like, what is it, like a lobster or whatever? The frog boiling. I was thinking of the frog boiling.
I don't know how to make any of those creatures, so but that's the right animal.
Well, first you get two other frogs.
But it's just like, you see that the end point of that is like pretty, like, oh fuck.
There's such a balance too, right? Like, small things, there's a lot of different ways to sort of think about it, and the guilt of sort of living a normal life, but while all the stuff is sort of crumbling down. And to not get too terribly dark and depressing on this episode that is about a movie, I will remind you.
But I think he would want us to have this conversation.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think how I square that circle for myself is I don't like, so we're in New York City. I don't think that our city is going to be spared from this.
Yeah.
I think it will come to our doorstep at some point. And that is more when, like, I am, you know, we you know, you do what you can, you do anything on social media, you help people that you know in those situations. Even on the channel, I'm trying to, you know, we do these things called recently deleted history, which is basically a chronicling in short form, so people will watch them, of like all the things the Trump administration are essentially erasing from history, various different things, so many weird things, bits of the Constitution, like just kind of at least have a record.
Evers got shot today.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. So
they deleted that from where?
They deleted the rationale for why he got shot, which is racism.
They literally have been, there's an initiative, there's an executive order with a real stupid name, I know it's hard to believe, that is essentially erasing a lot of reasons. The most recent one, we haven't done this one yet, but we're going to. They removed from the public park in Philadelphia that is George Washington's original house.
Yeah.
They've basically removed the plaque about the slaves that built it. And the bit that this is true, George Washington did one neat trick to make sure his slaves wouldn't be emancipated, because there was a law in Philadelphia where if they were in there for 6 months, there would be emancipation. So he just cycled them.
Oh
like,
my God.
like there's, and this is history. Like there's, if you're an American, if you're almost anywhere really, we all have to come to terms with the fact that like where we are from has done good things and atrocious things. Like it's just because it's a group of people coming together to try to live in a society. Like, and when we stop paying attention, and I think like, I'm going to bring this back to the movie in a second too. Like when we stop paying attention to the bad things that have been done, that's when it allows more bad things. You could argue that from the different ways that the previous administration didn't punish the previous administration. You could look at the admonishment after the Civil War. You could do a whole bunch of things as to why we are in the predicament that we are. But 9 times out of 10, it comes from there being no repercussions and just trying to move along. We did it with the pandemic. And they did that in the 1918 flu pandemic. They just stopped talking about it because it was too tragic and too soul crushing. And you just got to get through your next day and go to work and feed your family. Like, so when you were looking at a film like The Secret Agent, it's very interesting to sort of watch this, again, very regular man be thrust into very unregular circumstances and get to see him navigate a world that is both topsy-turvy and completely normal, has a complete like veneer of normalification. So like it's what we're all living through now, and eventually will rotate around the United States before anything kind of gets fixed up.
I mean, to bring it back to not just this movie, but to Wagner Moura, Civil War was a movie I was kind of really mixed on when we reviewed it and saw it, the Alex Garland movie. But the further we've gone into this administration, the more that movie has like that is a movie that replays in my head a lot these days, and I think about a lot. And
Which America?
Yeah. Which America are you from? And the scene that actually is playing in my head is the when they stop in this small town that seems to have life continuing on as normal, and they
go to the store.
They go to the store and start buying, like looking to buy dresses, and it's only when they walk out.
War in Ba Sing Se.
wherever it was, and then they walk outside, and there's snipers on the rooftop, like in case anyone comes in. And obviously, once they leave that town, they are in mortal peril because the world around this town is basically collapsing and crumbling. And that's a more extreme version of what's going on, but like to use the frog in the boiling water analogy, that's like the frog in the middle of 100 degrees Celsius water. And it feels like right now we're at 20 or 30 degrees, and we're kind of like, it might be worse than we think it is, but we're not quite sure how to deal with the situation yet. It's like, maybe if we just stay in the water a little bit longer, the water will cool off and we'll be good. Or,
my point was, do what you can and help where you can, but also like save your mental bandwidth and strength for when it comes to you. Well, because it's not gonna.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the most depressing thing that I think about these days is that in the previous Trump administration, COVID came in year 4. And we're in year 2 right now of this administration. And I was like, and my feeling about the Trump administration and, Donald Trump in general is there was no, what's that?
I said you're a fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. 2028, I'm going to be right there. But the thing that I think about is that there was no worse a person to be in the White House when COVID hit. We talked about this on the podcast. We had episodes devoted to this at the time when we looked at, the responses to COVID at the time. But like, we're still early, we're still at 20 degrees right now. And
I look at this, I look at it like another way you could put it, if you want to be pretty dramatic about it, is like the gap between 1933 and 1939 is a long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can't foresee what 1939 is going to look like.
Yeah.
And like, that's crazy to me. That's where I'm like, oh my God.
But I bet it's going to have AI chatbots.
Yeah, that's going to make it much better, of course.
Yeah.
That and climate change make me feel really comfy about the future.
Yeah. I mean, let's just review what we've talked about on this episode so far. We've talked about dictatorships taking over and normalization of life after that. We've talked about the fact that kids can't watch movies or read books anymore. and we talked about an administration that is far more interested in clamping down toward and moving us closer and closer towards an autocracy than we previously thought. And in the midst of this is a wonderful movie.
In the midst of this is a wonderful movie, and I think like the way that you're connecting it now actually like brings something to mind for me that I feel like is maybe a positive way that we can look at this, which is like illiteracy, but be it like media illiteracy or like literal illiteracy is a tool of autocracy. Like they don't want you to be smart and they don't want you to understand what you're consuming. And I think if we're us three and probably a lot of the people who are listening to this looking for ways that like we have a role in fighting against autocracy or like these kinds of like fascistic leaders, like we have the tools to teach other people how to fight that. Like if we like make it part of our jobs, which we literally do, like all three of us, to be like, here's what you need to know. Like, here's how you can like, here's why these things are important to you. And here's how they help you in these ways, like interpret the world. Like that is in some small part, even if it is small, like fighting against all of these things. And so I think like, you know, we can all feel guilty for not being like the freedom fighter who's like on the street, like, you know, throwing shit at ICE or whatever. But it's like, we also have a role to play and we have to do that job well. And that's what I think Kleber is doing as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's all, I think it's all connected.
Yeah. I mean, we can't all be Jeff Up and I, you know, like making movies under these circumstances. But yeah, I do. It is a small part, and but like here's the what I think is a great example is that all of us. Well, I'll speak for myself here. I didn't understand a segment of this movie and how it was operating as I was watching this movie. I was curious about it, and it took me a lot of reading outside of the movie in order to understand how the Harry League story was actually operating within this movie. But it was like, once I understood that, the text got richer for me, and like the experience got richer because I understood exactly how that metaphor is being used, or that, you know, that magical realism in the film is not just being used for a sort of beautiful flourish, but it's also playing into this bigger idea of the tools of oppression being used against itself. And again, and also, just my favorite thing in this movie is this idea that the dictatorship eats itself, like by negotiating with itself and by if you eventually turn everything into a cultural operation or an argument about culture, it eventually will eat itself to entirely. I found that really, really fascinating. And that's actually what I loved about this movie. It's not shouting from the rooftops about like oppression and how it works, but it is this like beautiful, quiet reminder of like how the world transforms over time. And then if you can go watch Pictures of Ghosts on the Criterion Channel, it is also just a beautiful love letter to his hometown. And, it is filled with these like incredible performances and characters on the fringe of the story that are so like lovingly told. Like Mr. Alexandra, I think is the projectionist, his father-in-law. When I saw who that was based on in Pictures of Ghosts, I was like, I just lit up, because it was like, it's obviously this person that this person who was the projectionist at this movie theater, whom he loved and he thought was just a really great guy, and then who he got to like basically bring back to life in this movie. And I was like, that's an incredible thing as a filmmaker to be able to do. And he does it like, I swore when I saw Pictures of Ghosts that was actually the guy that was in the movie we were watching, when in fact it was a recreation of him. And I was like, that's just the coolest thing I've seen this year.
God, when the hitman was walking behind him in the city street, I don't think I cared so much.
Yeah.
I was just like, this cannot happen. Yeah. What is going on?
Also, oh my God, guys, my dad like grew up with the guy who like hires the hitman, like the
really?
business dude. Yeah.
Wait, the really ripped dude.
No, like
the business guy,
the old guy with
the one who wants to put a hole in his face. He says, "I want to."
Girota, yeah.
That your dad knows him.
Yeah, because his brother, like my dad played volleyball, and my dad and his brother was on my dad's team. So he was like, I was at that guy's house all the time. That's crazy.
So funny.
What did your dad or your people in your family who might have seen the movie? What did you have a sense of what they thought of it?
I think they loved it.
Yeah.
He's not like a guy who like he's not very articulate when it comes to like
why I love something, but I liked it.
Yeah. He's like, that was great. Like that's kind of where he goes with it.
Yeah.
He speaks my dad.
Yeah. It's like he gets very passionate about it. He loves movies, but like it's harder to get him to like articulate exactly why that is. But he did love it, as far as I know.
There was one episode of this podcast forever ago. Yeah. I think it was Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, it's your dad's on the episode.
Where my dad is the guest. And it is a delight.
Yeah.
But
he'll often be like my mom and I will go talk about something for like a half hour and he'll be like, you guys are putting too much into this.
Amazing.
What does he think of what you do? Does he watch your channel at all?
Right?
He does. No, he watches all of them and he's like really into it and stuff. So I don't know, but
I don't know. Well,
yeah, it's hard to say.
But. On that note, Izzy, I think I really want, I as we sort of wrap up here, I do want to sort of go back to what you said. I think your positive spin you kind of put on the situation, and not only what the three of us do, but what a lot of, and truly in some way anyone listening to this can also do in a variety of sizes of ways, is actually a really heartening truth. Like I come into these conversations from a very negative bend, and I'm going to do whatever and I'm going to try, but Jesus Christ. And that was a really, like, I'll say it for myself. I very much appreciate your take on that. And I hope that it resonates with the listeners as much as it resonated with me, because I think we kind of need that. So. Yeah.
Well, it's like, I imagine, like, when I kind of spiral out and I'm like, this is going to be a civil war. I'm like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? It's like, nobody wants me on the front line. Yeah. I'm going to be writing copy for the pamphlets we're handed out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I know my skill set. And so I'm like, how do I apply this?
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing.
Everybody's got to figure that out for themselves.
Yeah.
Before we go out, my just last question is, which is entirely frivolous and unimportant, But Matt, we have now watched every single Best Picture and talked about every single Best Picture nominee in this. We're only 2 away from the Best International Picture or foreign language films at this point. Is there any, Izzy, have you watched them all at this point as well?
You know what? I found out that Train Dreams existed when it was nominated for Best Picture, so I have not seen that one.
It's actually it's very brisk. Actually, it's not a big challenging watch.
I think I've seen everything except for that and F1.
Well, you're missing out the clear front runner here.
I know.
Get it?
So sad.
Listen, I've been poo-pooing on F1. I actually liked F1 a lot. I couldn't believe it. But I am shocked it's in Best Picture category. It is definitely the weakest of all of them. But you know what? I think it actually has a really good shot at Best Editing. I'm not gonna lie about that. Like I think F1 is the most basic B movie that hits above its weight class I've ever seen. Like it's so you already know it. You already know this movie if you haven't seen it, but it is still very enjoyable.
So anyone want to put money down on their Best Picture picks at this point?
Oh,
I mean, I think One Battle After Another is going to win.
I'm leaning toward.
I think Sinners.
I'm kind of thinking Sinners might have the momentum, and again, I'm thinking of that not necessarily from like a point of view of the Best Picture. I this year I do think for me, Marty Supreme, One Battle, Sinners, Train Dreams, any of those win, I'll be like, yeah, fine, totally fine. Like I'm not, I'm not in a boat where like one is clearly the best. Even if Hamnet wins, I'm like, yeah, that's totally fine. But I kind of feel like Sinners might have the momentum behind it. There was an interesting moment. The Netflix CEO, Ted Sarandos, was being grilled on a Senate hearing this week about the Warner Brothers acquisition. And there was a sort of fascinating moment, which I don't know if he intended to sort of play out, but he was being asked about the 45-day window from theatrical to streaming. And he made this comment that that window changes depending on how well a movie performs. And he was like, here's a good point. Superman really underperformed. And its shift to streaming came very, very quickly. But Sinners really overperformed. And it didn't hit streaming for a long period of time because it like really blew expectations out of the water. And I thought that was a fascinating insight into the idea that from at least from an industry point of view, a film with like such a recognizable piece of IP, Superman, really underperformed, and a film with an original IP, a horror movie, largely African American sort of positioned film, really overperformed this year. I thought that was just like a fascinating insight into and possibly why I think kind of Sinners might have this sort of unusual momentum for it to carry it throughout the year. That's just my feeling.
I do wonder if he went and he would look at those on paper, like before they came out with different standards, though. You know what I mean? Like, a Sinners overperforming to him because he like doesn't expect it to do well.
He doesn't expect it. Yeah.
I think that's sad in its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where I'm leaning, but we'll talk about this more inevitably as we get to our best of the year and now, as we approach the Oscars as well.
Now the real question: who's winning the Super Bowl?
Who's playing in the Super Bowl?
I should know this because I'm working on it. The Patriots to win, right?
I guess I don't care one way.
I actually put money on the Patriots today just because I wanted to be different. With some people that I work with, I was like, the question was asked, and I was like, I have no idea.
You can buy boxes, man.
I'm excited for the halftime show. I think Bad Bunny's gonna be sick.
Yeah. I'm all for it.
Well, we'll find actually by the time. Well, no. By the time this actually comes out, the Super Bowl will not have happened yet, but it'll be very, very soon. Football. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about the New England Patriot. No, about the film The Secret Agent. Izzy, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us once again.
De nada, obrigada.
When you are not speaking Portuguese exquisitely, where can folks find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Be Kind Rewind.
Shahir? And you need to say it in Portuguese as well.
Oh, okay. Got it.
When you are not covering up a dead body with an old cardboard box. Where can folks find you?
You can find me being the cheapest hitman available at my website, suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA. Matt, when you are running projections of Jaws from your house, where can people find you?
You can find me using my projector to literally throw it on your building's wall over at my website. Extra history and extra credits over on YouTube Machine. I believe by the time this comes out, I think it's our extra history complete on Cleopatra, which is a series we did forever ago, but there's new historical context and we fix a lot of our mistakes we made. And I love that story because you don't get half of it when we're like, especially, and you don't get like an eighth of it in school. But even the stuff you like, the way that Cleopatra, not only her life went, but also the way her myth affected myths, is fucking insane. And it also, again, shocker, is also very political. So anyway, please go check that out. Yeah. No, but the way that she is, the way her friends and enemies spoke about her hundreds of years after her death was also used just politically throughout. It's insane. Do you guys remember the story of David Fincher trying to mount a $200 million Cleopatra film with Angelina Jolie?
Oh, it was a big story.
I remember her almost playing. Yeah, I didn't know David Fincher was attached to that.
I think it was. Yeah, it was with Sony Pictures. And it was with the producer. It was with Amy Pascal. This is all just from memory. And it was like this massive undertaking that he was trying to get. And it was like, at this point in his career, he was just like, I'm asking for all the money. We're talking about Cleopatra here. I'm like, I want this number or I'm not doing it or something like that. So
I remember Patty Jenkins trying to do it with Gal Gadot.
Oh yeah,
which I thought was really funny.
That might have been the fall off point at that point. Not to say it
champagne
that way.
to fill the Nile.
Oh God, we definitely know that line. Next week we'll be watching a movie.
Yeah, we haven't figured out what we got. We still got a couple of weeks before the Oscars, and as I say, there are 2 Best International Film nominees that I would love to get to. They are just difficult to get screenings of. The voice of Hind Rajab is playing very sporadically. I believe our friend Siddhant Adlanka is hosting a Q&A of one this weekend, but we'll see if we can get to it. And the movie to see on a big screen is Sarat, which I do have an invitation for. But again, getting to these aren't widely available films right now, so they could be a little bit challenging. But we're still want to get them in and have these conversations. So
and we have a full week.
Yeah,
we have a full week until Wuthering Heights. So
that is true. I want to read Wuthering Heights as well. I don't think I'm going to do it in a week, but
it's not terribly difficult. You can get through it.
Well,
I bet there's a free audiobook somewhere.
We also did a So You Haven't Read if you just want to do a Cliff Notes type thing. We also do have that available.
I am in a book club right now where Wuthering Heights has been floated, and I anytime I don't read the book for the book club, I feel like I'm cheating. So you're part of the youth problem.
Yeah,
I am.
Wow.
I am indeed.
You're so young. We're all so young. Well, Shahir and I are very young. He's like looking from the side of youth.
We all know that I'm spiritually 90, so I think I'm fine to claim my silent generation status. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will talk at you all next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.